Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how you would actually pass an array to a method. So let's create a quick array int scores equals, and I'm just going to put some values in here, 2, 8, 5, and 1, right? Okay, I'm going to put 4 values in there. And now I'm going to write a method that gets the lowest score, right? That gets the lowest score. So I'm going to want a place to store that, right? Int low score. And I'm going to say low score equals get low score. And I'm going to pass it the array. And the way I pass it the array is just like I pass a method any variable as I put the name of the variable there, right? And then we'll print out the low score. The low score is, right, and whatever was returned from this method that I didn't write yet, right? So now let's write the method, right? So I'm going to leave my main at the bottom and I'm going to write my method up top. So the method is public, right? It could be called outside the class. It's static. It is not void because it's actually going to return a value. The type of value it's going to return is an integer, so it's public static int. The name of the method is getLowScore, and it takes an array, and here I can call it whatever I want, right? I could call the array s if I want, and I need to tell it that it's an integer array, and the brackets tell them that it is actually an array. So now in this method, I'm going to be using the array name s, right? And I could find the minimum value. So I'm going to declare the minimum value, and I'm going to initially set it to the first element in the array. I'm going to set it to the first element in the array. Okay, now I need to go into a loop, right, for int I equals, now I already put the 0th element in, so I'm going to start at 1 in this case, and we're going to go to the all the way to the length of the array. Now, I don't know the length of the array, right? Here I know the length of the array. There's 4 elements, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3. But all I did was pass the array in. Now, I could do this. I could say, scores, comma 4, and pass in that there were 4 elements in the array. But that is not necessary because, fortunately, Java gives us the ability to find the length of the array. And the way we do that is we put the array name, and then we put dot length, right, with no parentheses, right, because that's actually an attribute. And then we're going to increment the count on the for loop. So this is going to go from 1, it's going to go to 2, it's going to go to 3, and then it's going to stop because once it's hit 4, 4 is not less than the length. And what's it going to do here? I'm going to say if the array, so if s bracket I, so in this case, if the first element in the array, right, is less than the minimum value, and the minimum value I originally set to the 0th, then that means s sub 1 is less than the minimum. So now I'm going to make the minimum value that element, right? S bracket I. And I'm going to keep doing this, going through the whole array, and when I get to the end, this min will hold the lowest one, because I'm basically comparing every single one of the array elements, seeing if it's lower than the current lower one that I have, right? So at the end of this for loop, min is going to be a good value, and I can return min back to the calling method, right? So this should actually work. It should return that the minimum value is 1. Well, let's see if it works, right? So I'll run my code. The low score is 1. Now, this doesn't validate it. We should check our code, right? Let's put this as 12. Let's put this as 21 and this as 57. Now the minimum value is 8. Let's make sure it returns an 8, right? And sure enough, the low score is 8. So this worked, okay? Now, that's how you pass arrays. Now, there's one thing I need to caution you about with passing arrays to a method. So I'm going to actually change this method, right? I'm actually going to get rid of this low score. I don't need it. I'm not even going to return anything from my new call. And I'm going to actually call it mess up array, right? Okay. And instead of printing low score, I'm actually going to print the entire array, right? So for int I equals 0, I is less than scores dot length, I plus plus, and I'm going to print it out, right? Sysl. We'll print out the array. So we'll print out the element number, right? Number. Let's print it out in like a nice bracket. We'll say scores bracket, right? Plus I plus quote close bracket equals plus scores sub I, right? We'll print it out nicely formatted. Okay. And correct that. Okay. So we're going to print out this. Now let's not call anything now. Let's just make sure this works, right? So let's even get rid of this whole method, right? Okay. So what should happen here? Basically, we should just print out the array. We should get 21, 8, 57, 12. So let's run it. And I run it 21, 8, 57, 12. So my code worked, right? Okay. So now let's call this method called messUpArray. So I need to declare it public static void. It's not going to return anything. messUpArray, and it takes an integer array. Oops, messUpArray takes an integer array. We'll call it s. Doesn't matter. As parameter, right? Okay, now, in here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to say s sub 2 equals 999. That's all I'm going to do, okay? Now, here, I'm printing it out after, right? After call to messUpArray. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to print it before I call messUpArray, right? Okay, so I call messUpArray and then I print it. So I print it once, I call messUpArray, and then I print it again. Now, remember when we talked about passing parameters to methods? No matter what you did to the variables in the method, when you got back to your calling method, in this case main, those variables were intact, right? If you passed an integer, no matter what you did to the integer in the method, it was still the original value back in the calling program. That's because Java passes by value. It didn't really pass the variable. Arrays are different. When you pass the scores array to a method, if you make a change to that array in the method, it is changed when you return from the method. And I want to illustrate that here. So in this case, the 0, 1, 2, the third element in the array, when I come back, will be changed to 999. So let's run this and see that that really is the case. So we started out, here's my array, 21, 8, 57, 12. After my call to this method, look, my original array scores is changed. So this is the exception, one of the exceptions to calling by value, right? This is actually calling by address, right? It's passing actually the array to this method. So when this method uses the array, even though it's calling it a different name here, when it uses the array, if it makes a change to that array, that change is permanent when I return from the method. Just something for you to keep in mind. That actually can be a good thing in many cases, which we'll see later.